How is it for you out of all the interviews you've ever done that when you know one's going badly? Because one of the what I like to do on this podcast, I mix it up from comedians to wrestling to boxing to music, and I've had some Hollywood writer interviews and things. The ones with the comedians, I would say 4 out of 10 times are a disaster because if they make a joke that you don't laugh really hard at, the mood is done. Or if I make a joke that's funny, it's like fuck him. So how is it for you when you're doing an interview and you can tell, oh shit, this is going bad?
Well, it's only happened a few times, luckily for me, and when it goes bad, it's usually because people like I would say two that really stand out to me that went bad were Juventud Guerrera and Carlito, where they're just giving, you can tell they don't want to be there, and they're giving like one sentence answers to all of your questions. That's where it's just like fuck. They've gone through 3 pages of questions in 15 minutes. I paid them for an hour. How am I going to get through this extra 45 minutes that I've paid for? Those are the frustrating ones. And in those cases, I just never deal with those type of people again. But at least Carlito was polite. Juventud was a massive asshole. So, as I said, I think I've done pretty well. Nikolai Volkov, as much as, for instance, everybody was great. The same line for everything. Everyone was great, wonderful to work with. Although that one was kind of frustrating because I had paid him a decent sum for that interview, and I felt like he was giving the same answer. In the end, he passed away shortly after, and that's the only career interview he did, and it still gets big hits to this day. So even though it felt bad at the time, it ended up being highly viewed. So I haven't had that many. Obviously, you're right about the comedians. I've interviewed a few comedians, and it's the same thing. But in those cases, if it's a comedian, I'm usually doing it just to be nice as a personal favor to somebody. So I know it's not going to be a huge hit video.
One of the ones that I remember watching on your channel that frustrated me was with Rick Steiner, because there was these great topics, but he would give half-a-minute answers, and it's like, see, Rick, could you delve a bit? But you don't want to say that because he could be fucking
Yeah, and I believe I was also wrestling him that night, the same night I did that interview with Rick Steiner. So it's like you don't want to harass the guy too much because you want him to be cooperative in the match. But yeah, you're right about that. But back to the Carlito one for a second. It's like he feuded with Ric Flair for a while, and like I know it's his gimmick, but I asked him like, what was it like working with Ric Flair? Oh, that was cool. Any other memories of it? No, not really. It's like you wrestled Ric Flair. That's the best you could tell me. It was cool.
But that's probably the attitude that got him a lot of backstage hate.
Oh yeah, I mean I'll be perfectly honest, he seems lazy. Like he probably could have gone back to WWE too, but he's lazy. I have to say though, he was good in the ring that night because he also wrestled for us in Great North Wrestling that night. He did try hard in the ring, but as far as like putting a little bit of an effort in the shoot interview, which you know is part of my business, I mean, I'm better known for the Hannibal TV than I am even for my wrestling company now. So to not like, if he had put more effort into that shoot interview, for instance, and been entertaining, we would have used him again. Because it's like, okay, we'll bring you back. You did a good match, but we know we're going to get a good interview out of you. But if someone does a shitty interview, it's like, well, we know we can't interview you, and that's part of the reason why we're spending all this money bringing you in. So they do kind of screw themselves over. But yeah, I agree with that about Carlito. I mean, he just doesn't, he's too laid back. And that's probably what got him in WWE, why he didn't have a longer run.
And it's like that whole thing that they would call the Howard Stern effect, or I can't pronounce that name. Howie, call him Howard Stern. People knew that if you go on that show, there's certain things you kind of have to talk about. And if you don't want to talk about them, don't go on the fucking show. Because if not, then it can turn people off you. And if you don't want to, if you know what you're doing when you're doing a shoot, then fucking do it.
Yeah. Well, as I said, I learned my lesson there with Carlito, and as I said, I don't mind him as a person. Like, I'm not taking anything away from him. He's a nice guy. He showed up. He didn't ditch me on the show, but I was disappointed in that because a lot of fans were looking forward to that interview, and it was a short one with little effort put in. So, whatever. As I said, it doesn't happen too often. Thank God. There is other instances like Teddy Hart, for instance. I did one good interview with him, but then the second interview I did with him, he only did half an hour of the scheduled hour. So, like, for instance, that one was a live interview, and a lot of people have seen, like, it was. I've come out about all my incidents. We did a thing where Teddy and I had a fight during the first part of the interview, but Rene Dupree was also on stage. So the deal was Ted and I were going to have this argument. I was going to storm out, and Rene was going to finish the interview. But it became clear to Rene that Ted was not being cooperative. So then Rene left, and Wes Briscoe, one of my partners, was like, well, Ted's not answering any Rene's questions. Rene just left. That was shoot. Rene was insulted. He left the stage. So then my partner's like, get Wes on. Wes, try and salvage this. And then Wes goes on, and he wasn't cooperating with Wes. So he got a payment for an hour interview, but he only ended up doing half an hour, and he didn't even hit any of the topics that I had given Rene to like finish the question on. So there is also stuff like that where the guys don't finish the interview. It happened with Heuven too. At the 45-minute mark, or not, he's paid for an hour. It was somewhere between half an hour and 45 minutes. He starts tapping his foot. Like, hey, I'm ready to go here, finish up. And it's like, what the fuck, man? I paid you for an hour. And that night, he wasn't wrestling for me. He was wrestling for another company. And I know for a fact he got the same pay for his interview as he did to wrestle that night. And the interview's a lot easier. So, man, just answer my questions, answer the fan questions. Don't be so difficult, but whatever. Yeah, I know why they had issues with him in WCW.
Yeah. I did an interview with the guy recently, a wrestler. He's the son of a famous wrestler. I'm not, and I couldn't actually see him because it was by audio, but you could audibly hear in the background this. And then,
boy.
Like, you could hear it, and I thought, well, maybe that's just me. But then somebody else interviewed. A few weeks later on, and you could hear the same noise on that interview, and I thought maybe it's the flu, and it just sounds bad, but he sounded high as a fucking kite. Allegedly.
I've never met Brian Pillman Jr. Oh my God, I'm looking out my window now. It's actually snowing here. This is crazy. I think I'm gonna cry. I might start crying. But yeah, I never actually met. We were gonna use him actually on a Great North Wrestling event this year, but because of the lockdown, that event ended up being canceled. So I can't say I've had any dealings with him, but that's a funny story. But me personally, I don't care if people are high, people are drunk. I'd rather have a drunk person talking a lot than a guy giving short answers. Like, for instance, Marty Jannetty. One of my favorite interviews was Marty Jannetty, who I don't think was drunk, by the way, because I was with him for 3 hours and I never saw him take a drink during that time. I do know he took a break to get high from smoking weed. But I love how no matter how fucked up they are, everyone always assumes it's alcohol. But Marty, I thought, was interesting. No matter whatever it was, if it was because he got high or whatever, it made the interview funny.